Hey, everybody, and welcome back. We are the Ace Football Academy. Coach Hamilton alongside Coach Dunham, as always. Welcome back to Friday Footy Talk, Coach. Something we started last week. We had a lot of fun with it, giving our top 5 ways to improve outside of training. So if you haven't listened to that, be sure you go back and give it a listen. Coach, I'm just trying to spice things up here and do something a little different. So Friday Footy Talk, we want to talk about topics that kind of apply to everyone and kind of get everyone talking and everyone wanting to comment and wanting to tell us their opinions, whether it is a parent, a player, or a coach. So tonight we're going to talk about everybody's favorite penalty kicks. There's so much that goes into penalty kicks from, and again, from a parent side, from a player side, from a coach side. I guess we're going to hit this from a coaching standpoint because you and I are coaches. If you are a player that is listening, if you are a parent that are listening, and you would like to come on and just kind of touch base with us about how you feel in that moment of penalty kicks and things like that. Coach, I will say, and I'm going to hit you with something different that, so I'm push on the spot a little bit.
Let's do it.
Because we didn't, I guess when we started talking about this episode, we're looking at penalty kicks as, end of the game, championship match and, things like that.
Post-regulation.
Right, post-regulation. Of course, we know that penalty kicks happen, during the course of matches quite often, really, especially depending on what referee you have. So, Coach, let's talk about those in-game penalty kicks for you as a coach.
Okay.
So I'm going to throw a couple questions at you that I'm going to let you answer. I'll kind of piggyback on your answer or disagree with your answers. So I guess the first one is, in a game or going into a game, do Chris and Charlie and Jonathan know that, hey, if we earn a penalty kick, you're who I'm going with? Like, how do you approach that heading into just a regular season, normal match? But hey, if we earn a corner, I need one of these 3 guys to take it. Or how do you do that as a coach?
I think for me, I think in general, I know who my number one PK taker is.
Okay.
They probably know who they are.
Now, team knows.
That's what I was about to get to. Typically, the team's like, oh, PK, oh, Charlie's got it.
Yeah.
It's not really a discussion. It just happens. And if, for whatever reason in that game, Charlie got injured, okay, well, it's between Chris and Jonathan as my 2 and 3. How are they looking today? If Chris is looking like he's, playing well today, or Chris got a dinged up ankle in the game, I might go with Jonathan. But to answer your question, yeah, before the season starts, I know who my PK kicker is, and I have a succession line of 1, 2, and 3. Now beyond that, probably not.
Right.
For in-game PKs, I like keeping it to the same 1 or 2 people through the season. But yeah, I have them, and the team probably knows what's happening before the season even starts.
So I agree with that for most of it. I guess I'm a little different, and I will tell you, and this is just me being, inexperienced as a coach several years ago. I had never really given this much thought.
Okay.
You always, and we're going to get to post-regulation PKs in a minute, but you always, so give a lot of thought to those. But in-game PKs, I had one the first year that I took over for you at Central. We're in the district championship. It is early in the second half. We earn a PK. And I kind of played it off like, I'm going to let them handle it, I'm going to let them decide. But it was like, oh crap, I'm not really prepared for this moment.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I had all 3 of my senior captains on the field at that point. And, they're like, oh, everybody's yelling, everybody's hollering. and I'm very calm on the sideline. I'm dying on the inside, but I'm very calm on the sideline. And I'm just like, I'm gonna let them hand up. I'm gonna let them talk it out.
Yeah.
And again, this is a big testament to my captains. They came together, and then I get a freshman to step up to take this kick.
Wow.
And she buries it.
She did.
And, you know,
I remember that.
Yeah, it's great.
I remember.
So, but after that moment, I kind of thought, okay, I need to have a game plan going here. So, kind of come to your way of thinking where I have my 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's even just 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, something I have started to do. So when I say I have my one and my kicker and my second kicker, I'm talking like handballs, things like that, right? I also have a steadfast rule that I tell my players: if you earn the PK, you get first dibs on whether or not you want to take it, right? So if you're the player who gets tackled in the box, you know, if you're the player who, you know, whatever it is, if you earn the PK, I give you first dibs on taking the PK. Now, this doesn't surprise you, but you'll be shocked about how many of them are like, yeah, no, I'm not taking that. I'm like, but also to my thought process, you've done all the hard work. You know, you made the right run, you made the right move, whatever it is. Go finish the job if you want to.
I love that you just brought that up, because when I played club ball in college, the guy that was running the team was that his rule was, if you got fouled in the box, you cannot be the one that takes the PK.
Oh, okay.
And his reasoning was, hey, you're probably riled up.
A lot of emotion.
Or your emotions are running. You're frustrated, you're mad. You know, he says, you need to step aside to calm down and let somebody else go ahead and bear it for you. And interesting thing is one season he was not there at a game. I got way fouled in the box.
Right.
Got called. And I'm like, I'm taking it. And I was mad. And he proved himself right, because it was a horrible PK. No, it got saved.
Okay. Well, at least it got saved.
And I see, it was like, it dawned on me, that's what he means. It hit me right there. I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense.
And I do see that way of thinking, and I hope now that I have coached for several years at this point, that you kind of see those moments, right, where, all right, Chris is fired up. I need to pull him off that line, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know. But for me, I feel like, hey, if you've earned it, if it was your play that earned it, then you can go finish the job if you so choose. Let's kind of dive into penalty kicks, post penalty kicks, Coach. Real quickly, you know, we're talking, you know, as everyone knows, we can draw in soccer. So most of the times, if we get to penalty kicks, it is a tournament, it is a district game, it is, you know, a high pressure match that means something, sure, right? So you and I have talked in previous episodes, you know, rule change episode, maybe even the things we hate episode. I can't remember, but we have talked about penalty kicks before. I guess, real quick recap. Neither one of us love them, but neither one of us have an answer for what to do instead of them.
Okay. I do recall this, and one of my rule changes was shrinking the size of the penalty box.
Correct.
Because it drives me nuts on the outside of the penalty box as you just get inside the line, and the guy gets fouled with his back to the goal. Why are we giving PKs for that? So that's where my frustrations with so many PKs happening come into play. But going back to your thing of push regulation, let me throw something at you here. You asked me, do I have my number one kicker? Well, do you come into a district final knowing who your 5 kickers are going to be?
I do. It's one of the, I mean, honestly, it's one of those questions I pose early on in the season. And I pose it to my teams, and I say, hey, who does not want to kick a PK?
Thank you. Yeah.
Because
you have to ask that question.
And even those players that are like, I'm like, you put your hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even those ones that are like, I'm like, nope, that's you. Put your hand up, right? I want my PK kicker thinking, okay, I got it. You want me to make a kick? I'll go make a kick.
Absolutely. And I did the exact same thing. And I did not come into games knowing who my 5 kickers are going to be. I have a list of names who I'd like to take it.
Okay.
But just like you did, I said, hey, if you don't want nothing to do with PKs, please go sit on the bench. So I can get a look of who knows they want to take a PK.
Yeah. And I think that's the right way to do it. I mean, I can't.
You don't want some kid freaking out.
Yeah. And who ends up
I don't want to
hating
be
the
there.
game
I don't want to do this.
PK, right? So I agree. Yeah. I may have 8 or 9. I mean, you hope you get 8 or 9 players. I think where you and I are, it's more like 3 or 4 players, and that 5th player, you're just like, hey, man, you're taking that PK. Sorry, right? But you get somewhere between 5 and 10 players that are confident enough to step up and take that shot, because we're going to get to the goalkeeper side of it in a little bit, but you and I are firm believers that the advantage in PK is to the shooter.
For sure. No question.
So, Coach, let's get into a couple decision makes. That is not right.
Yeah.
Decision
Come on, teacher.
making situations that we do in penalty kicks with, starting with that coin toss, that captain's meeting. So we've moved into PKs. Your captains are going to do the coin toss. Coach, you win the toss. Are you kicking first or are you defending first?
I tell my captain, you pick.
Okay.
Let's be honest here. The refs are usually picking the end, so that decision's already out.
Right.
And I understand the pressure of kicking first, very first kicker. I understand the one that being the number 5 kicker kicking second in round 5.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean,
but I don't know how often first and 5 actually go into effect. It's really the in-between ones that you're worried about. So I'm not so worried about kicking first or kicking second. The pressure's there already. I don't think I'm worried about building more pressure on anybody. So I'm just like, hey, if you feel like you want to go first, go first. If the team wants to go second, pick. I didn't care. So I left it up to my captains when they go to the coin flip. You pick where you're there. Go with your gut.
I love that, and actually it's something that I might start using, honestly. For me, it's always kind of been about the team I have, right?
Oh, yeah.
Am I confident in my first 3 or 4 kickers? Am I confident in my first 5 kickers? Am I confident in my first 7 kickers, right? If I'm highly confident, then I like the idea of going first because you immediately swing that pressure to the other side, right? If I'm confident in my goalkeeper, if I have a Claire Cress in my goal, then okay, I'll defend first, and you missed your first shot, and now the ball's in my court, right? So I do see both sides of things. I guess if you made me choose one as a coach, I'm going to make you have to pick one as a coach as well. I'm not giving you your captains out. But if I, as a coach, had to choose one in a match, I am choosing to kick first.
Okay.
What about you?
If I had to pick, I would pick second.
Okay.
That just makes sense to me. There's no particular reason. It just makes sense. I know that if they've missed, I feel like I'm going to be a little more calm.
Yeah.
When I go up and kick. And if they've made it, I just got to do my job. So I feel like second just makes sense, but honestly, I don't care first or second either way.
All right, Coach. Let's move on to the next order of business here, and that is the order of shooters.
Very important.
Right? So,
yeah. I think this is way more important than kicking first or second.
Okay. And you mentioned this already, so I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you kind of just talk about your thought process as a coach as you're picking your order of shooters.
So, we've already said, who doesn't want it, go sit down. So now I'm looking at everybody, and I'm like, yep, okay, this is the list of players that I wanted. Yep. So now my best PK taker is going number 1. Because you're expecting them to drain it, especially at the high school age. they're your best passer, they're the most composed, whatever it may be. They're your captain. I like the idea of going best PK taker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth being probably my number 5 taker.
Okay.
I want my first 3 shooters. They've got to bury it. They've got to bury it. And then if we get to 4th and 5th, I'm still confident in my 4th and 5th.
Yeah.
They may not be as confident as my first PK taker, but by the time you get to the 3rd and 4th, you know what's going to happen.
Correct.
You usually know what's going down. And that's kind of where I'm at. My number 1 through number 5 in that ranking order. That's kind of usually how I go. Because the gap between them usually isn't that significant at that point. But the issue is if you get beyond the 5.
No, yeah.
That's where my nerves really start creeping in.
Let's come back to that.
Yeah.
Let's come back to that.
Yeah.
All right, so Coach, I'm going to just again, I have learned through. I used to kick again, it just shows you how inexperienced I was coming into coaching 10 years ago, right? I used to kick my best kicker third, and and he or she usually always made it. But if you start 0 for 2, then
that's added pressure on them,
right?
Yeah.
So I have very quickly in my coaching career have swung the pendulum to your way of thinking. Okay, I want my first. Really, honestly, we say top 3. I guess it depends on what level you're in. I want my first 2 kickers to make it 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just I say 9 out of 10, but really in my brain I'm thinking 10 out of 10. Right. Yeah. When they take it, they should be scoring.
Absolutely.
But let me just throw this. So again, we're talking about order of shooters. What if your best kicker missed a PK in the middle of the match?
During the match?
During the match. So early second half or, even early first half. So they've already missed in the match. Are they still kicking first to you in penalty kicks?
Great question.
And let's take away the keeper made a great save. So I can't look at you and say, hey, do the same thing. The keeper's not going to get that again, right? Let's say they have blasted it 4 feet over the top of the goal.
Yeah.
Now what are you doing?
I'm looking at them. Like when I'm doing my, hey, if you don't want to take a seat, and I'm going through saying, who's confident to take it, whatever my thing is, I'm looking at my number 1 PK taker. And if I don't get the good vibe, I might push them to the 4th or 5th kicker. I still feel like they're going to take a PK for me, but they may not be my first PK taker, depending on what I'm seeing in their eyes. If it's like tearing up, you can tell their emotions are still flowing. Like, oh boy, you're gonna take number 5 spot. You're gonna take number 4 spot. But if they're looking at me and they're mad, they're like, I'm like,
if you don't pick me, coach, we're gonna have an issue.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, got it. You're number 1.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason that you're number 1.
Correct.
And they know when they miss, they need to redeem themselves.
Well, and that goes back to that 9 out of 10. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They've missed once.
Right.
They're not going to miss again.
Exactly.
Right? And I know we want to keep this under 30 minutes for our listeners. So one more quick question about order of shooters. I had a wild season last year with our middle school team. In our first 10 games, Coach, I'm not kidding you, I think 6 of them went to PKs. And we had to have a winner in all of them because what was happening in our conference was crazy at the time. When do you start to adjust that order, right? So I had a moment where for 2 games in a row, so there's no PKs in the middle of the game, just we end up in PKs.
Yeah.
I had a game where 2 games in a row, my first and second kicker had both missed.
During the game?
No, in back-to-back penalty kick shootouts.
Oh, boy.
And so that third game, I changed my order up a little bit, right?
Okay.
I left them on the line. They still kicked, but I moved that order around. And, of course, when you do that, especially with middle school girls, then you start getting into those confidence things, the ego thing, all that kind of stuff. But let's put all that aside. when do you start to say, okay, I need to adjust my order of kickers?
Yeah, the fact that you went through that many post regulation
Yeah,
PKs,
it was wild.
I think that makes sense.
It was wild.
Even if they didn't miss, I think at some point you got to start saying, all right, maybe I need to mix this up a little bit.
Right.
It's not to take them out of their comfort zone, but it's more about letting other teams not knowing what I'm going to do over and over and over again.
Right.
So let's be honest here. In a normal season, you might get one
Right. Oh, absolutely.
post-regulation
Absolutely.
shootout. So that's an odd situation you went through there. But I think after the third, shootout period, it's time to start mixing things up a little bit.
I went after two.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And both first and second kicker and I, we had conversations. They understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, you stink and you're not kicking anymore. It was, hey, I still have a lot of confidence in you, but let's take that first kicker off of your shoulders for a little bit. Let's move you to the fourth kicker where you can kind of see how the goalie's reacting, see those types of things before you shoot.
Well, let me throw something back at you here. Before the PK start, are you having conversations about how your kickers take their penalty kicks? Or are you just saying, hey, just be confident and take care of your business? Are you explaining, hey, this is what needs to happen? Or are you staying out of it and hoping they handle it? Of course, we've done high school, but you've done middle school and high school. So does that change?
It doesn't. For me, so I don't do a ton of penalty kicks, during trainings and things like that in season.
I think most coaches don't.
When we approach postseason, when we're getting ready to go to a tournament, we may spend a little bit of time. The end of practice, I may divide everybody up into teams, and where everybody's all 8 of you are going to take a PK and losing team runs or whatever it is, right? So, but for me, I always preach low into the corner, right?
Absolutely.
It is a hard pass to that back post, right? To that, the post behind the goal. Kick it as hard as you can on the ground into that back corner. And if the keeper saves it, then you're going to applaud the keeper and walk away, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I preach. And I do remind them of that, in that huddle that you have right before the PKs, right? I'm like, hey, low into the corner. But that's really kind of all I say. I don't like, hey, love it, right? I don't get in your face. I just kind of say it as a, hey, remember, low into the corner.
I agree 1,000%. I actually have 2 things I tell them. Number one, just like you said, hey, this is a pass to the corner. It doesn't need to be a rip with your laces. See it, place it. The second thing I say is, don't try to trick the goalkeeper.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I like that.
Don't try to do this fancy stuff. You see the pros doing these stutters, the chips, or they try to get the keeper moving before.
Right.
We are not professionals. I say, hey, don't be fancy. Don't try to play no tricks. Line yourself properly and just run up and kick it.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Bury it. Put it away.
Yeah, I like that, Coach. Coach, we don't want to run long tonight because, again, our Friday Footy Talk, we want to keep below 30 minutes. And I want to talk about the goalkeepers real quickly. Yeah, so sure. Let's flip the script here. What advice do you give to your goalkeeper when we're gone? And again, we're not talking mid-game. We're talking post-regulation PKs. What advice are you giving your keeper?
First of all, I want them to stay loose and positive. I don't want the pressure getting to them because, honestly, they should have zero pressure on them. Yeah. And so I say, hey, stay loose, stay positive, read what you can. And I say, all I need from you is try to save 1. Yeah. If you don't, that's fine. If you can save me 1, you're going to throw that team off. Yeah. And I say, stay loose, be positive. We've all got your back. If you can get me 1, we will love you forever.
So, 2 things. The first one, I agree with you. I tell my keepers, hey, you save me 1, we should win.
It makes a huge It's one thing for them to miss. It's completely different when that keeper saves it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up. So I'm going to come back to that. But the one thing I tell them, hey, save me 1, and we should win. I look at them and I say it in front of my kickers. I say it in front of my, you saved me 2. And we just lost a light, coach. You saved me 2 and we better win. And I put that out point blank. Like, hey, you saved me 2, we better win.
For sure.
So that that's the first thing I say. I also tell my keepers pre-shot. I wish they would kind of hop back and forth, right? But I at least tell them to, hey, move your arms.
Yeah.
Right? Don't just stand there frozen statue. Like, do something.
I love the shuffling along the line.
I mean, I wish that, and then as they go to approach, then you break down and you're ready to defend, right? So, Coach, real quickly before we sign off, so we talked about our advice to the keepers. Are you one of those, when you talk to your keeper, you say, hey, I want you to try to react to their ball? Or are you saying, hey, we know they're going to a corner. If it's a good shooter, we know they're going to look for a corner. So I just want you to guess a corner and go.
So typically at the high school level, I would, depending on the keeper that I've got, because the keepers that I had varied in athletic ability.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they had very good athletic ability, I'd say, hey, try to react to their body positioning.
Yeah. Read the hips, all those types of things, right?
If their athleticism wasn't at the highest, I'd say, hey, pick a side and just go with it.
Yeah.
You get it, you get it. You don't, you don't. You move on to the next one.
Right. Well, and I think, and I agree with that. I think you and I are both open and firm believers in that penalty kicks advantage kicker, right? And so, and again, so that's why you go back to telling your kicker or your goalkeeper, hey, make me a save. Now, I guess this is where you and I differ, but in a penalty kick situation, if you miss wide, if you miss over, for me, that's a win it's a win, of course, but I count that as a save for my keeper.
Oh, okay.
I just do that. They missed the PK, right? I know you didn't get gloves on it, but they missed the PK there, and so I like because again, a miss is a miss, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If Dunham's team steps up and blasts their first kick over the top of the goal, my immediate thought is, okay, we should win.
Yeah.
And then if they blast their second kick wide, my immediate thought is, okay, we better win, right? And I'm very upfront with my teams on that. I think that's important. Coach, any final thoughts on penalty kicks before we sign off?
They're the most unpredictable part of soccer.
Right.
It always gets me when you go into push regulation shootouts and you're feeling confident and it ends up going to the fifth kicker.
Oh yeah, we didn't even get to that.
Oh boy.
Or this
now my heart's
what about
pumping.
the seventh kicker? Right?
Because I've had that moment.
Oh, me too.
Where we went through all 5 kickers, stayed even, and I had to get another 5, and I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah.
This is going to get real because
now you get into
I'm losing confidence.
Because now you get into
yeah. Yes.
But Coach, I love this conversation. We could probably do another 30 minutes on penalty kicks. So maybe we'll circle back to it eventually at some point. Coach, a lot of fun tonight. This is Friday Footy Talk. We are the A.C.E Football Academy. Coach Hamilton, Coach Dunham, go kick some ace.